Robert Redford, a name that instantly brings to mind classic films like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and All the President's Men. He's the kind of actor whose presence on screen is undeniable. Even now, years after stepping away from the spotlight, Redford's legacy continues to loom large in Hollywood. He's a legend, a quiet, charming figure who's managed to avoid the chaos of celebrity life, preferring to focus on his craft. But in 2025, something unexpected happened. Redford found himself sitting across from one of the most ruthless reporters in the industry. Known for digging deep and asking the tough questions, this reporter wasn't going to let Redford off easy. They had heard the stories, the rumors, and now they were ready to get the truth out of him. The interview started like many others, friendly exchanges, softball questions. But there was an underlying tension, an electricity in the air that suggested things were about to take a different turn. It wasn't just another interview, this was a battle between a man who'd spent his life evading the spotlight, and a reporter determined to bring him into it. And when Redford clapped back, the truth that came out, it was far more than anyone expected. Robert Redford is not your typical Hollywood star. While many of his contemporaries bask in the limelight, Redford has always preferred to keep his private life, well, private. His name is synonymous with excellence, from his acting to his directorial work. Over the decades, he's built a reputation that goes beyond the usual Hollywood fame. He's a two-time Academy Award winner, known not only for his iconic roles in The Sting and Ordinary People, but also for founding the Sundance Film Festival, a place where independent filmmakers have a platform. His impact on the film industry is undeniable, yet despite his fame, he's rarely been part of the gossip columns or the whirlwind of celebrity scandals. What makes Redford different? It's the way he carries himself. He's not interested in the constant media circus. He avoids interviews, doesn't engage in social media, and rarely gives the press the chance to pry into his life. Instead, Redford is focused on creating, producing, and supporting the next generation of filmmakers. And that's why for years Hollywood and the press have been trying to get a rise out of him. Reporters have been trying to get him to crack, to share some juicy detail, some secret about his career or life, but Redford has always kept his cool. His reputation isn't just about his work, it's about his composure, the mystery that surrounds him, and his ability to remain untouched by the chaos of fame. But that calm, steady demeanor was about to be put to the test. The reporter sitting across from Robert Redford wasn't just any journalist. This was someone who had made a name for themselves by asking the questions no one else dared to ask. Known for their no-holds-barred interviews, they had exposed countless scandals, cracked open Hollywood's carefully crafted image, and pushed even the most guarded celebrities to reveal their true selves. For years this reporter had been after Redford. They knew the rumors, the whispers that circulated about his early days in Hollywood, his relationships, and even his rumored conflicts with some of the biggest stars in the industry. There was always an air of mystery surrounding him, and that made him the perfect target for an explosive interview. They had done their research, every detail of Redford's career was mapped out, every film, every appearance, every possible moment where they could catch him off guard. This wasn't going to be a soft interview. The reporter had prepared a series of hard-hitting questions, aiming to force Redford to reveal something, anything, that would finally shed light on the man behind the legend. The reporter wasn't shy about their intentions. They didn't want just another conversation about Redford's career or his philanthropy. They were after something deeper. They wanted to uncover the truth, to see if they could break the image Redford had carefully cultivated over decades. It wasn't just about the story, it was about exposing the man behind the curtain. Redford's silence, his refusal to play the Hollywood game, had made him a symbol of something rare in an industry built on spectacle and drama. And this reporter was determined to crack that image, to make the quiet, reserved Redford finally speak out. But little did they know, Redford was ready. He wasn't going to fall into their trap. The interview started innocently enough, with the reporter asking Redford about his early career, his rise from a struggling actor to a Hollywood legend. His breakthrough roles in films like Barefoot in the Park and Butch Cassidy, and The Sundance Kid. At first, it felt like a typical celebrity interview, nostalgic, light, and filled with praise. But then, the questions took a sharp turn. The reporter, sensing an opening, pushed Redford on the topic of his personal life. They asked about his relationships, the women he had been involved with over the years. It wasn't surprising, Hollywood stars are often asked about their love lives, but the reporter's tone was different. It was probing, sharp, almost accusatory. "Do you think your personal life has ever overshadowed your career?" the reporter asked, eyes narrowing as they watched Redford's face for any sign of discomfort. Redford didn't flinch. He simply leaned back in his chair, his calm demeanor intact. He answered, but the questions kept coming. The reporter's voice grew more insistent as they pressed on. "There have been rumors about tension between you and some of Hollywood's biggest stars, like Paul Newman. Can you shed light on that?" Redford's smile didn't fade, but his eyes darkened slightly. He wasn't angry, not at all. He was just aware of the reporter's intentions. "Why are you asking about rumors?" Redford replied, his voice low but steady. "I think we've moved past that. If you're here to talk about what happened in the past, we might as well wrap this up now." The reporter wasn't deterred. They dug deeper, pushing Redford further with questions about his time at Sundance, about the controversies surrounding some of the films showcased there, about the artists and filmmakers he had supported, and whether he had ever regretted any of his choices. But the more the reporter pressed, the more Redford seemed unfazed. He answered every question with grace, but his calm was becoming unsettling. The reporter, growing increasingly frustrated, finally went for the jugular. "Let's get to the real question then. What's your biggest regret in your career? Is there anything you wish you could change?" This was the moment the reporter had been waiting for. They believed they had Redford cornered. But Redford's response would change everything. When the reporter asked about his biggest regret, they thought they had finally found the chink in Redford's armor. For years, people had speculated that he might regret stepping back from acting, or that he wished he had pursued more mainstream roles. After all, he had a reputation for turning down big-budget films in favor of smaller, more personal projects. Surely there was something in his career that he wished he had done differently. But Redford didn't bite. He didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, his gaze now steady and piercing, locking onto the reporter's eyes. For a brief moment, the room was entirely silent. The tension between them felt thick, almost tangible. "Regret." Redford repeated the word slowly, his voice surprisingly calm. "I've learned to live without regret. You can't make art, or live your life, if you're constantly looking back at mistakes. But you want the truth. Fine, I'll give you the truth." The reporter, eager for the scoop, leaned in. "Yes, please. The truth. That's what we're all waiting for." Redford's lips curled into a knowing smile, but it wasn't the smile the reporter expected. This was something different, something that made the reporter's skin crawl slightly. It was a smile that hinted at something far deeper than anyone could have imagined. "I'll tell you what I regret," Redford said, his tone almost conspiratorial. "I regret that I ever let the world believe the version of myself that they wanted. That they believed I was just the quiet, reserved guy, who didn't care about fame. That I was just some actor with no substance. What they didn't realize was that I was always playing a part, even when the cameras stopped rolling." The reporter's expression faltered. This wasn't the answer they were expecting. But Redford wasn't finished. "You see," he continued, his voice still steady but now carrying a weight, "I made a decision long ago. I chose to step back, to create this image of myself as someone above the Hollywood machine. But in doing that, I kept the truth hidden. The truth that I've been running the Sundance Film Festival for a lot longer than anyone thinks. And not just as a founder, but as someone who used it as a cover for something far bigger." The reporter's eyes widened. They'd done their homework, but this was something they had never even considered. Redford leaned back in his chair, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "But that's the thing about truth. It has a funny way of coming out when you least expect it." The reporter didn't know how to respond. They had come looking for a story, but what Redford had just revealed was more than they could process in a single moment. The room was silent, and for a moment, the reporter could only stare at Redford, trying to process what he had just said. The truth Redford was hinting at wasn't just a career regret or a personal revelation, it was something far more complex, something the reporter had never expected. Redford's casual demeanor was now replaced with an almost eerie confidence, as if he had just revealed something so deep, so powerful, that it shifted the very ground beneath them. The reporter opened their mouth to speak, but no words came out, they were stunned. Redford, on the other hand, was calm, as if he had just shared a simple anecdote. "You want the real truth?" Redford continued, his voice lowering. "The Sundance Film Festival. It wasn't just about giving independent filmmakers a place to shine, it was my way of controlling the narrative. I built it to create a space where I could guide the industry, shape it from behind the scenes, and keep my hands clean." The reporter's eyes were wide now, completely caught off guard. They had always assumed that Sundance was about the filmmakers, about the art, but Redford had just revealed something darker, something that changed everything they thought they knew about him. But it wasn't just about control, Redford went on. It was about the power of influence. "I used Sundance as a platform to connect with some of the most powerful people in Hollywood. I pushed certain films, certain directors, certain ideas, without anyone ever knowing I was the one pulling the strings." The reporter could hardly believe what they were hearing. All this time, they had seen Redford as a quiet, almost passive figure, someone who played by the rules of Hollywood. But now, the truth was clear, Redford wasn't just a passive player, he had been a puppet master, shaping the industry in ways no one ever realized. "Why didn't you say this before?" the reporter asked, finally finding their voice. Redford's smile grew wider. "Because sometimes it's better to let people believe in the version they want. The truth doesn't always fit the narrative they've created." And with that, the reporter was left speechless. Redford had clapped back, and the truth was more unbelievable than anyone could have imagined. The interview ended in stunned silence. The reporter, still processing what Redford had just revealed, couldn't believe their own words. They had come into the room expecting a juicy tidbit, a scandal, something to satisfy the hunger of their audience. Instead, they had uncovered a truth so staggering, it seemed to shake the very foundations of Hollywood itself. The reporter sat there, mouth agape, unsure how to wrap up the conversation. Redford, however, remained calm and composed, as though he had just answered a simple question. His expression was unreadable, part amusement, part something else, something deeper. As the cameras were turned off and the crew began to pack up, the reporter couldn't help but think about what had just happened. They had gone after Redford expecting to expose him, to reveal the cracks in his perfect image. Instead, they had uncovered a carefully guarded secret that changed the way the world would see him. Back in the media world, the story broke fast. Headlines screamed about Redford's shocking revelations. The interview went viral, but not for the reasons the reporter had hoped. Rather than exposing a hidden flaw, Redford had only solidified his place as one of Hollywood's most intriguing and complex figures. And that, in the end, was the truth no one saw coming.